Watch this, the shorter your friction, the more spin you generate. This one concept, Chinese letter, will transform every serve you hit. Here's a question for you. Does longer contact with the ball create more spin, or does shorter contact? Most people guess longer, but they're wrong. Watch this. I rub the ball with a long, sweeping motion. Looks like friction, but the spin is weak. Now watch. A short, explosive snap. The ball jumps off the racket face, spinning hard. The reason is simple. The ball only sits on your rubber for an instant. In that instant, the faster you accelerate your friction, the more spin you generate. When I drag across the ball like this with a long motion, the force gets spread out. You feel like you're making a lot of contact, but the ball leaves the rubber almost immediately. It's gone before your big swing finishes. Most of that motion is wasted. Now watch the difference. At the moment of contact, my movement is compact, the amplitude is tiny, but the acceleration is intense. That short burst produces far more spin. Here's the critical distinction. Don't use your friction motion to make the ball travel long. Use your arm to send the ball deep. If you try to push the ball long by extending your friction stroke, you only increase the distance of contact. You don't increase the spin. Think carefully about that. Use your arm to add length and speed. Use friction to add rotation. The shorter and more explosive that friction moment is, the higher the spin rate. So how do we make the racket move faster at the contact point? The answer is finger power. Watch closely. If I swing using just my arm, the racket head moves like this, downward in a straight path. That's not real friction. The arm goes down, but the racket head barely rotates, so the spin is weak. Now watch what happens when I activate my fingers. The racket head whips around in a tight arc. See the ball, it's spinning hard now. Compare, without the finger snap, almost no spin. With the finger snap, heavy spin. If your serves lack rotation right now, the most likely cause is that your racket head isn't whipping. The farther from your body, the faster the racket head needs to rotate. That's where spin is born. Don't just drop the racket down with your forearm and lift it back up, or chop straight down. Instead, let the racket head whip around using your fingers. Now, which body part generates the fastest racket head speed? Your fingers, because fingers are the most agile. Let me show you the hierarchy. If I drive the racket with my upper arm, the head barely moves. With my forearm, a little better. With my wrist, faster still. But with my fingers, watch the racket face snap. That's the fastest rotation. This is the core idea. If you don't engage your fingers, the racket face stays almost static through contact. Then, whether you're serving with left sidespin or right sidespin, if you contact mostly the side of the ball, the serve can never carry heavy backspin. It will be mostly sidespin. To generate real rotation, you need to brush underneath. Watch, the racket face gets under the ball and catches the lower portion. Think about why a push is so hard to loop against. When you push, your racket naturally contacts the bottom of the ball, the center bottom area, which loads it with pure backspin. That's the most effective angle for spin. Now, many players trying to serve a pendulum or hook serve do this. They push against the back of the ball and slice downward. See the problem? They're cutting the rear surface, not brushing underneath. So the ball comes out with very little spin no matter how hard they swing. You should be brushing the center bottom of the ball first. Secure that heavy downward rotation, and then gradually add forward momentum on top of it. If you start by pushing the back of the ball and chopping straight down, it won't spin no matter how hard you try. The same applies to hook serves. Many players set their racket angle too steep, so at contact, they catch mostly the side and barely touch the bottom. So when you first start practicing, focus on brushing the bottom of the ball, not the very bottom, but the center lower area, leaning toward the underside. Get that feeling first. Watch my racket. I'm catching underneath with a sharp snap. Remember, the friction burst and the forward acceleration are two separate actions. They brush the side of the ball more than the bottom, and that's why their sidespin backspin serves carry so little real spin. If you're just starting to work on heavy spin and you can't seem to grab the ball, don't rush into adding sidespin yet. Keep your racket angle flatter than you think it should be. For a hook serve, flatten it out. For a left sidespin backspin serve, same thing, keep it flatter. Watch, even with a flatter angle, I still produce sidespin. See how the ball curves? Once you have that base rotation locked in, then during the forward follow-through with your forearm, you can steepen the angle slightly. And now the ball comes out with both heavy spin and pace. When you brush, stay toward the bottom of the ball, not dead center underneath, but biased low. That's where you max out your backspin. Then, during the forward acceleration phase, angle the racket face slightly to the side. Watch closely. In the first phase, the friction phase, I make contact, and right at that moment my fingers fire a short, explosive burst of force. After that snap, look at my racket head. It's angled to the side. Feel the direction of that forearm push. It's not upward and it's not downward. It's forward and slightly to the side, like you're sliding the racket out along the table's surface. Lock the wrist, then push with the forearm. Let me show you both phases connected. Watch, friction snap, then immediate forearm drive, one seamless motion. That's right, the acceleration comes from the forearm. So let's put it all together. Phase 1. The fingers are the primary force, snapping through the ball and whipping the wrist to generate that concentrated friction. Phase 2. Lock everything shoulder, elbow, wrist, and send the entire forearm forward and out. This is exactly how a hook serve works. A hook serve is the textbook example of backhand acceleration. The real power comes after the initial contact, not during it. You cannot rely on the friction phase alone. Without that follow-up forearm drive, the ball has spin but no pace.